I never thought I'd find myself standing on the side of a dirt road, staring at a cardboard box like it held the meaning of life. And yet, there I was, 65 years old, a lifetime behind me, sweat trickling down my back, and a box in the trunk that had changed everything. It all started 2 days earlier, when my nephew Kyle called me. Now, Kyle is the kind of man who can charm the rust off a tractor. Always smiling, always quick with a joke, and always, somehow, in trouble. "Uncle Joe," he said, "do you think you could do me a tiny favor?" I should have known right then that it wouldn't be tiny. He told me he needed to get a package to someone in Cedar Ridge. That's 3 states over, but he made it sound like I was just taking a pie to a neighbor. "It's nothing, really," he said. "Just some paperwork. Could save me a heap of time." I wasn't thrilled, but Kyle had helped me when my back went out last winter, so I figured I owed him. I said yes. He showed up with a box wrapped in brown paper, no markings, no labels. "Don't open it," he said, with a smile that was just a little too wide. "It's boring legal stuff." Right. I loaded it into the trunk and forgot about it for a day. I planned to drive out Saturday morning, make a weekend of it. My daughter asked if she and the kids could come along, make it a road trip. I hesitated. Something about the whole thing felt off. But I said yes. I didn't want to be that grumpy old man who says no to everything. So we packed sandwiches, charged the tablets, and hit the road. About an hour in, I noticed my stomach was twisting. Not from the gas station coffee, I've survived worse, but from that box. It was like it had weight beyond the physical. Like it was pressing on my conscience. I pulled over. Told my daughter I needed to check something in the back. She stayed in the car, kids watching cartoons, oblivious. I opened the trunk, peeled back the paper, opened the flaps, and froze. Inside were stacks of cash. Not bills, not receipts. Cash. Bundles of it. Neatly packed. Smelling like secrets. I stood there, heart pounding, wind pushing dust across my shoes. And I realized, I couldn't keep driving. Not with that in the car. Not with my grandkids in the back seat. Not when I had no idea what Kyle had gotten me into. That's when I knew, I had to make a choice. I didn't tell my daughter. Not right away. She was singing along with the kids to some ridiculous cartoon theme song, and I just didn't have it in me to break that fragile bubble of peace. Instead, I drove. I took the next exit off the highway, ignoring the GPS barking at me to make a U-turn. We wound through small-town roads, past antique shops and diners with peeling paint. I was stalling, and I knew it. Trying to buy myself time to think. What do you do when your nephew hands you a box full of what's probably dirty money? I kept seeing Kyle's grin in my head. That too wide, too easy smile. He always made messes look like magic tricks. And I, old fool that I am, let myself become the magician's assistant. "Dad," my daughter asked, finally noticing. "This isn't the way to Cedar Ridge." "I know," I said. "I just want to take the scenic route." She gave me a look. Not angry. Not even suspicious. Just concerned. "Are you okay?" "Yeah," I lied. "Just needed some air." We stopped for gas in a little place that looked like it hadn't changed since 1983. I stood outside, watching the pump tick up dollar by dollar, and tried to calm the storm in my chest. I could drive to Cedar Ridge. Drop the box like Kyle asked. Pretend I didn't know what was inside. But then what? What if someone followed me? What if this was bigger than I thought? What if I was already in trouble? By the time we got back on the road, I had made a decision. "Hey," I said to my daughter, trying to sound casual, "mind if we stop at a motel tonight? Get some rest, stretch our legs." She blinked. "You hate motels." "I know. But I'm tired." She nodded slowly. Okay, Dad. We found a quiet place off a back road, 2 floors, buzzing neon sign, front desk with a bell. The kind of place where no one asks questions. I paid in cash. From my own wallet. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, staring at the parking lot. The box was still in the trunk. Just cardboard and paper and whatever story Kyle thought he could get away with. I thought about calling the police. About turning around. About burning the box and pretending none of this ever happened. But mostly, I thought about the look in my daughter's eyes when she asked if I was okay. And I realized, I wasn't. The next morning, I was stirring powdered creamer into motel coffee when my phone rang. It was Kyle. I stared at the screen, steam curling from the styrofoam cup in my hand, and felt my jaw tighten. I let it ring 4 times before I answered. "Hey, Uncle Joe." His voice was all sunshine. "How's the road treating you?" I didn't answer right away. He continued. "Listen, I know you probably haven't dropped it off yet, I forgot to mention, can you make sure they sign the receipt? Just so I've got something for my records." He paused. "You didn't open it, right?" Silence. "Uncle Joe." I finally spoke. "What's in the box, Kyle?" A beat. "Come on, it's just some money for a guy I owe. Totally legit. Nothing shady. I just didn't want it getting stolen, you know." I could hear it in his voice, that nervous edge. He wasn't as smooth when he knew he'd been caught. "You think I'd put your grandkids in danger for that?" I said, my voice low. "Danger? What? It's just money, man. You're overthinking it." "No," I said. "You're underthinking it." I hung up. The kids were still asleep, curled under the thin motel blankets, and my daughter was brushing her teeth in the bathroom, unaware that her brother's kid had just used me as a drug mule or worse. I needed to act. I didn't want police. I didn't want scandal. But I couldn't pretend nothing happened. So I drove. We packed up, got back on the road, and I headed not for Cedar Ridge but for home. My daughter asked once why we turned around. I told her I forgot something important. She didn't push. Halfway home, I stopped at a rest area and called a lawyer I knew from my union days. Told him everything. Not the details about Kyle, yet, but enough to ask what kind of mess I might be in. He was quiet a long time. "Joe," he finally said, "if you didn't cross any state lines and you didn't deliver the money, you're probably fine. But you need to get rid of that box. Properly." Meaning? Not a bonfire in your backyard. Drop it off at a precinct anonymously. Or a lawyer's office. Somewhere official. I nodded, though he couldn't see it. Then I asked the question that had been stuck in my throat all morning. What kind of person uses family like this? He didn't answer right away. And when he did, he said, the kind who's used to getting away with it. That afternoon, while the kids napped in the back seat and my daughter dozed beside me, I took a detour. There was a law office I remembered near an old courthouse, about 40 minutes off the highway. Run by a guy named Fisher, retired prosecutor turned small-town attorney. No nonsense, no drama. I parked 2 blocks away, walked the rest of the way with the box in a canvas grocery bag. It weighed heavy, not in pounds, but in consequences. The receptionist gave me a look like she wasn't sure whether to call security or offer me a lollipop. "I need to leave this for Mr. Fisher," I said. "Tell him Joe Langdon dropped it off. He'll understand." I didn't wait for questions. Just left it on the counter and walked out, heart hammering like a kid who just confessed to breaking a window. I didn't tell my daughter. Not then. What would I say? That her cousin nearly got us arrested? That I let it happen? No. That day wasn't for confession. It was for cleanup. We drove home in near silence. The kids eventually woke, restless and confused. My daughter kept looking at me, like she knew I was holding something back. But she didn't press. She's like her mother that way, patient, but not blind. By the time we pulled into our driveway, it was sunset. The sky looked like it had been painted by someone who missed their kids. She helped get the kids inside. I unloaded the bags. And for a long moment, I just stood in the garage, staring at the empty trunk. Later, when the kids were asleep and the dishes were done, she found me on the porch with a beer and that faraway look I only get when I'm trying not to fall apart. "You want to tell me what's going on?" she asked gently. I thought about lying. Thought about brushing it off. But I was too tired. So I told her everything. Kyle, the box, the money. The motel. The call. She didn't interrupt. Just listened, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the sky. When I finished, she didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just said, "Okay. We're never doing him favors again." I chuckled, a short, dry sound. "No. We're not." And for the first time since I opened that box, I felt something like peace. I didn't expect to see Kyle again. Figured he'd slink away, embarrassed or angry, or both. But 2 weeks later, he showed up on my porch like nothing had happened. Wearing that same damn grin. "Uncle Joe," he said, arms wide, like he was greeting a long-lost friend and not the man he tried to turn into an accomplice. I didn't stand up. Just stared at him over the rim of my coffee mug. He sat down across from me like we were picking up an old conversation. "So. I guess you found out what was in the box." I didn't answer. He scratched the back of his neck. "Look, I didn't mean for it to get weird. I just thought, you're smart. You'd handle it. Like, no big deal." "No big deal." I finally said. "You put my family at risk, Kyle." "It wasn't dangerous." I stood up. "You don't get to decide that." He shut up, for once. Eyes dropped. The grin started to fade. I sighed and sat back down. The truth was, part of me wanted to wring his neck. The other part, well, I remembered him as a kid. I remembered holding him when he was 5 and scraped his knee. I remembered driving him to school when his dad bailed again. That's the problem with family. They don't stop being family, even when they stop being safe. "I dropped the box," I said. "At a lawyer's office. If you want it back, go talk to him." Kyle's mouth opened, then closed. "You serious?" "Dead." He looked like he wanted to argue. But all he did was nod. Stood up, shoved his hands in his pockets, and walked off the porch without another word. I didn't watch him go. That night, my daughter brought me a cup of tea, sat beside me, and said, "Thank you." "For what?" "For not letting him turn you into someone you're not." And you know what? That got me. More than anything. Because for all the mistakes I've made in my life, and there are plenty, that was one line I didn't cross. I thought things would settle after Kyle left, and for a few days, they nearly did. We cooked dinner like nothing had happened, watched bad reality shows, and told the kids, maybe, every time they asked for a puppy. But guilt doesn't knock. It moves in quietly, sets up camp behind your ribs, and waits until you breathe in deep. It started with small things. I'd reach for coffee and see the box in my mind. I'd hear my grandson laugh and wonder what might have happened if I hadn't opened the trunk. I'd lie awake at night, not from fear, but from the weight of having come so close to something irreversible. One night, my wife caught me staring into the backyard for so long, the porch light timed itself off. "You okay?" she asked. "I don't know," I said. "I keep thinking, what if I hadn't noticed? What if Kyle had caught me on a worse day?" She didn't answer with a pep talk. That's not her style. Instead, she poured 2 glasses of iced tea and sat beside me. "You noticed," she said. "That's all that matters." But that wasn't all. Not for me. I felt like I'd failed as an uncle, as a man who once promised a dying brother he'd keep an eye on his kid. Kyle wasn't just some idiot with a bad plan, he was a boy I helped raise, once. Somewhere between toy trucks and terrible grades, I must have missed a sign. The guilt, it didn't scream. It whispered, "You should have seen it coming." One morning, I found my daughter in the kitchen, staring into her mug like it held answers. She didn't look up. "Dad," she said, "are you still thinking about it?" I nodded. No point pretending. Then she said something that stopped me. "You taught me something that week. You showed me that being a parent sometimes means making a decision no one claps for." That hit me harder than any lecture could. Because I'd always thought of myself as the fixer, the steady hand. But sometimes the strongest thing you can do is let go of someone for good. Later that day, I drove to Kyle's apartment. Not to scold him. I brought something he'd left in the box, a photo album. One from the farmhouse days. Pictures of him in overalls, face sticky with watermelon, grinning like the world hadn't touched him yet. He opened the door, surprised. Looked older than I remembered. "Thought you'd want this," I said. He took the album. Flipped it open. Paused. "You kept it?" "Wasn't mine to throw away." He nodded, eyes on the page. Then shut the door without another word. I stood there for a second, then turned and walked back to the car. As I drove off, I thought, I can't fix the past. But I can learn to forgive myself for not being perfect. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. I woke in the middle of the night to the shrill sound of a car horn. Heart hammering, I realized it was just me, dreaming, perhaps, of being chased. Guilt doesn't announce itself with banners. It creeps in whispering, "You're too late." Days later, I found myself standing in front of the mirror, really looking, at every line on my face, every gray hair, every callus from decades of keeping promises. And I asked, who am I now? I remembered the stories Grandma used to tell me about her father, who taught her that every man carries 2 shadows, one cast by the sun, and one cast by his choices. My reflection showed both. I started replaying the road trip moments in my head, the sudden twist off the highway, the motel lobby, the brief scent of stale carpet as I handed over the box. Every decision echoed in that silence. In the kitchen, my daughter watched me silently, saucepan in hand. I wanted to tell her the memories of my own father leaving without warning, never giving me closure. Of how, as a child, I had learned to tie my own boots because I couldn't count on him to handle ordinary things. That's where my drive to be responsible began, where I vowed never to leave my own children unanchored. But guilt came with its twists. As I recalled those promises, I also recalled the quiet pride of protecting my family from shame, danger, unemployment, heartbreak, and now maybe worse. At dinner, she asked softly, "Dad, when you look at yourself, what do you see?" I choked. Then whispered, "A man who tries. And a man who's failed sometimes." Her eyes softened. She sat down and reached across the table. "Trying matters," she said. I nearly cried. Not because I was weak, but because I'd realized something. The guilt might outlast my mistakes, but it doesn't define me. That night, I looked again into the mirror and tried to focus on possibilities, not regrets. In the following days, I sat with the memory of handing over that box. I understood that guilt isn't an enemy to defeat, but a teacher, pointing toward the lines we won't cross again. I didn't expect any grand resolution with Kyle. Maybe there won't ever be. Family wounds don't always heal with apologies. Sometimes they just scar. Still, I found myself slowly forgiving myself. Accepting that some things I couldn't fix. Some people I couldn't save. But I could keep driving forward, and keep being the man who, even at 65, learned that courage isn't about never making mistakes. It's about making them less often, and choosing the next right step. It started with a knock. Not the kind from neighbors or mailmen, no, this was sharp, rapid, nervous. Like someone trying to knock the guilt off your door. I opened it and there he stood. Kyle. Same jacket, different eyes. Shifty. Hollow. The kind that had seen something go sideways recently. "Can I come in?" he asked. I didn't move. Just stared. Then slowly stepped aside. He walked in like he still had rights here. "You're lucky," he said. "You dropped out at the right time." "What happened?" He looked at me, then out the window, scanning the street like he expected someone to follow. "They came looking," he said. "The guys I was working with, they weren't happy I lost the drop." I felt my blood chill. "Did they come here?" He shook his head. "Not yet. But I think they're watching you. Just in case." My instincts kicked in fast. I checked the front yard, shut all blinds, grabbed the old baseball bat from the closet, not for show. "Kyle, what the hell did you drag us into?" He didn't answer. Instead, he pulled out his phone. Showed me a message. Coordinates. A time. One word, "Oh." "They're giving me one last shot," he said. "To make it right." I looked at the phone, then at him. "You want me to help you?" "No," he said. "I need you to come with me." I laughed. Loud. Bitter. "You must be out of your mind." He looked at me then, really looked. And I saw it, under the bravado and panic, fear. Real, gut-level fear. If I don't go, they'll come after me. And if they think I talked. He didn't finish the sentence. I stared at the phone again. My mind raced. Every instinct screamed to stay out of it. But the address on the screen. It was 20 minutes from my granddaughter's school. I had to know what was going on. And I had to keep it away from my family. "All right," I said. "We go. But I drive. And you don't speak unless I tell you." He nodded. And just like that, we were back in the car, me and the idiot who almost ruined everything, heading towards something neither of us fully understood. But this time, I wasn't scared. I was mad. And I was ready. We pulled into an abandoned truck stop just past midnight. One flickering lamp lit the lot. Beyond that, darkness. Not a soul in sight. "This is the place?" I asked. Kyle nodded, sweating. He checked his phone. "They said to leave the package in the trunk and walk away. No faces. No names. That sounds like a trap." He gave me a dry laugh. "That's because it probably is." I killed the engine. Opened the trunk. Inside, the package, unmarked, sealed tight. Whatever was in it wasn't mine to know, but the weight of it felt heavier than it should have. We set it down behind the dumpsters. Kyle left his phone there too, per instructions. No contact, no tracing. We walked away slowly, never turning our backs to the dark. Back in the car, we waited. 10 minutes passed. Then headlights. A black SUV pulled in, windows tinted, engine low and threatening. Two men stepped out, gloves on, quiet. One grabbed the package. The other scanned the area. Then they got back in and left. No words. No looks. Ghosts. Kyle exhaled like he'd been underwater. "It's done," he said. "No," I muttered. "It's just started." As we pulled out of the lot, I noticed something flashing under the dumpster. A tiny red light. I braked. "Stay here." I walked back. Bent down. A tracker. I yanked it loose and crushed it under my boot. Then I saw it, another one. taped to the inside of Kyle's dropped phone. They weren't just taking the package. They were tracking us. Probably had been since we agreed to come. Back in the car, I threw the phone onto the road and drove over it twice. Kyle looked at me, confused. They knew we'd come, I said. But I don't think they're done with us yet. That night, I didn't sleep. In the morning, I checked the driveway twice. My gut told me we'd just moved from one kind of trouble to another. 3 days passed. No calls. No messages. I started to believe maybe we were done. Then the power went out. I was making coffee when the lights flickered and died. Not a storm. No warning. Just darkness. My phone buzzed once. Unknown number. A photo. My house. My driveway. Taken from across the street. I grabbed my keys. Kyle was already at the door. "They're here," he said. I nodded. "We're ending this. Now." We didn't run. We prepared. I sent the kids to my brother's place 2 towns over. Gave them a story about a surprise trip. They were thrilled. My wife didn't ask questions. She knew that look in my eyes. The one from the army days. Kyle and I drove back to the same truck stop, but this time, we didn't bring anything. They were waiting. The black SUV again. But now 4 men. Armed. Less careful. "We know what you did," said the one with the scar. "We gave you a chance. You blew it." Kyle opened his mouth. I cut him off. "You're done here," I said. "You touch my family again, I burn everything." The man with the scar laughed. "You think you scare me?" I smiled. "I don't need to." I tossed him a flash drive. Inside, everything Kyle had collected. Names. Deals. Evidence. "And that's been copied," I said. "Distributed. If we vanish, your operation burns." They didn't move. But I saw it, the shift. They hadn't expected us to come armed with leverage. "Call it even," I said. "You disappear. We disappear." The scarred man stared. Then slowly nodded. "You get one chance," he said. "That's all I need." We left. No chase. No bullets. Just a mutual understanding between men who'd gone too far already. Back home, I changed our numbers. New security. New routines. Kyle left town. Said he needed to find something else to believe in. I don't blame him. As for me, I took the porch swing apart one afternoon. Found the old cigar box I'd stashed there with just-in-case items, keys, cash, burner phone. I burned the whole thing. Sometimes fire is the only way to keep your life from catching. And if you've ever stood between your family and something darker than the law, you know this much. Not every war is won by pulling the trigger. Some, by never giving them another shot. Would you risk your family for an old debt? Or burn the bridge without a second thought? Drop a comment, at which point would you have made a different choice? I'm curious, how many of us would choose peace, and how many would choose war?